Hello, everybody. Welcome to Knights of the Round Table. I'm Luca, and this is TJ.
Hello there, we're continuing with the sci-fi theme.
And for tonight's edition, we are reviewing Ghost in the Shell.
Alrighty then. So Luca recommended this film. Ghost in the Shell follows Motoko, a a cyborg who lives in the near future where cybernetics have become very widespread and very anonymous. She's part of an organization called Section 9 who specializes in dealing with cybernetic based attacks. There and when and things get very interesting when she and her crew start interacting with the puppet master, a mysterious hacker. All right then. So I mentioned this last time, but what's your history with this movie, Luca? Why did you pick it for this time?
I know about this movie from the Murakami Museum.
Yeah,
Over there, they played a trailer of Ghost in the Shell. Just go to the
yeah.
anime exhibit and you might find it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did
Is
research on
there?
it. Saw that there was this anime version and the one with Scarlett Johansson. And then I decided to
Mhm.
watch the anime and see what it was like.
All right. So this is your first time watching it. Is that true?
I've seen it twice.
All right. Oh, all right. Still pretty fresh. I was actually there with you. It was a wonderful exhibit. Is it still open?
I'm assuming so.
I think it would be rotating, but that's not important. What'd you think of this movie?
I thought it was an awesome film. It has a cool
Yeah,
design, and the fight scenes are exciting to watch.
yeah, always, yeah, always, yeah. I quite enjoyed it too. It's a very, I don't know. This might be. I'm not a huge anime person. I love I hate to call it genre. I like a lot of I like some of it. I like a lot of Japanese animation. Although I wouldn't say I am in completely engrossed with that, if that makes any sense. But that said, I do love animation from that decade with things like Akira and what's it called? That's Angel Angel that's not Angel Dust. Sort of Angel. There's this movie called Angel something that I also love. I like movies of this decade. I like their weird technology, the grimy animation, which is 2D. I also like the fact that everything is so detailed, which is enhanced by everything being made, well, by hand essentially. There, it's a very I was very happy to review this film and look back at it. Personally, I've watched it before, but that was years ago, and I think I was very tired when I watched it.
What do you remember from it?
I remembered a few things. I recalled it decently. There was no. There were a few little things that I forgot, but really, most of it isn't that important. I guess we should start with the world. What did you think of the world of this film? The world building and the design of it.
I like it. It has a very futuristic design, and I like the technology that we see throughout the film.
Yeah, I quite enjoy that as well. It's very the world feels very grounded. You do have these, yeah, like there's a lot of fantastical augmentations. You have people with mechanical eyes and strange hands and these interesting future tech. But all of this is in a very grounded setting. The city of did they call the city anything? I think it's just
It's in Japan.
yeah. Yeah, but the setting feels feels very alive. I love the attention brought to the people in the background and the way that we focus on how people move around in this world through boats and the grime of it. It feels very alive. In fact, some of my favorite scenes from the film were when we're just exploring the city, watching things happen.
So, going off the
those scenes felt,
continue. You first.
to finish that point off really quick. They feel there's such a great atmosphere to those scenes, and there's them. So what's the question?
Going off the city being grounded, I have a fairly small criticism.
Mhm.
I think the city could be a little silent in some areas. These scenes where the city is silent feel like they just feel a little lacking to me.
And
The characters are just casually talking to one another, but to its defense, it's nice to see them bond and build a story.
And you're talking about the points where they just start philosophizing, correct? Like on the boat.
On the boat
Yeah,
and in the building, and sometimes outside.
Yeah, that is something I wouldn't say that's a fault of the city so much. It's so Ghost in the Shell. Ghost in the Shell. An aspect I like about it is that it does touch on a number of themes such as existentialism, the role of memory, what the relationship between ourselves and machines. However, one aspect I didn't like about it is that a lot of it is done through talking. This movie is surprisingly talky at times, which on one hand, there's a few scenes, as Lucas said, where the characters go on about existential ideas and talk about what it means to be a robot and such. And on the one hand, it's kind of interesting that the film is touching on these themes, as said. But on the other hand, it feels very stilted and very inorganic. I'm assuming part of that is the sub. Actually, no, it would be a dub. I think part of that would be the dub. I'm sure that blends a few things a bit, but it does feel very on the nose and surprisingly, what's the word? I shouldn't say surprisingly. And it feels that, it's boring. It's not an engaging way to explore those themes. I guess you should talk about the characters. What do you think of the characters?
I think most of the characters are great. Motoko is a great protagonist of the film. She's always wondering how she came to life, and she always takes her job seriously. Her partner Togusa seems like a nice guy. He doesn't disobey Motoko, and he knows there's something up with the city's technology. And I think the rest of the characters are okay. They're mostly like put in the background, but they help keep the movie moving along.
Yeah, I found the characters to be quite enjoyable. And I do wish the movie did flesh them out a little bit more, and we did see them interact in some more organic situations. Which is, I watched the sequel actually. I think that's something the sequel does a little bit better. But as for the characters themselves, I like Motoko. She is very interesting. Batu looks cool, and I also like what's his name? Tagusa. He does feel like a much more grounded character, which I think for the cast is a very important thing. He does bring. Most of the main cast, with the exception of Hakusa, is his name?
Yeah.
with the exception of Tatsukusa and I wrote his name, Desku. What's the director's name?
Daisuke.
Yeah. Beyond those two characters, many of the main cast is, well, they're cyborgs. The most Motoko is the most modified. I believe it's inferred that she is essentially a brain in a body. But even her partner Batigo, like he has those weird eyes. Yeah, and they look very interesting. I really love the design of the technology of this world. I
Yeah.
never asked about everything. They don't overplay it. That's something very good. They,
Yes.
it feels a lot of this stuff. They a lot of this stuff is held very much in check, which adds to the believability of the world. I guess we should. I guess so. How do you think of the? So what do you think of the film's themes? We talked a little bit about how it talks about like the nature of souls and such. What do you think of that stuff?
I thought the themes were well presented. It feels kind of figurative, like they're speaking in figurative language, and they're trying to convey a big message behind the film.
We might go a little long, but I think that's good.
Yeah. Do you like the pacing?
I did like the pacing. I felt like the film had a very good pace. We get enough time to see the characters work, get to know the world. I think the villain in his aspects get enough explanation to be interesting without being bogged down. And there's a decent, and I feel there's a good balance of comp of action and more calmer moments. It's not a complete action fest. I found the pacing good. To go back to the themes, I found them to be very interesting. A little clunky in some they were used a little clunkily in some areas, but they do feel yeah. But they do feel very interesting. And I really like how this world uses its settings to bring up these ideas and and do what science fiction does best and ask questions about what could be and yeah and the nature of reality. And what you think of the villain? I wouldn't call him a villain. Like before, I think I would like to go into spoilers a little later, but I wouldn't call him so much a villain. But what do you think of the antagonist of the film?
I quite enjoy the antagonist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think they did the reveal of him greatly. Like we get his side of we get to hear his motive, and then have these epic showdowns. I just like all the mayhem he causes.
I quite enjoyed him too. I liked the puppet master. He was an I wouldn't call him an antagonist, but I do think he was a very I would call him an antagonist, but he is very interesting. I especially like how his role in the story changes throughout as we learn more about what he is and how yeah and we learn about his motive and I like how he does play into the themes. I guess we can get into spoilers now. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Yeah, minor spoilers. I don't think these would ruin the film, but it does occur in the end. So the yeah, so I do so being I think it's a very interesting reveal that the puppet master, whose name is the Project 2501. Is that correct?
yes,
Yeah. So 2501 is revealed not to be a person in America as but a it's not an AI. Something yeah, he's something invented it could be he could be a soul, he could be an AI. He's not, but he's something ethereal that lives in cyberspace essentially, and yeah. And I found the reveal that he wants to merge with Motoko to be very interesting. Yeah. What do you think about that reveal?
I think it was an epic scene. We get to hear Monaco and Project 2501 have a very deep and dramatic conversation.
Yeah.
And it feels like I feel like it's important to the entire film in a way.
How so? Do you think it's an interesting culmination of the themes of the film? Do you think it's a
Because
do you think it's an
the puppet master states his purpose and that he wants to like take over Japan's technology.
He doesn't really no he doesn't want to take over Japan's technology.
He feels like
wants to
he's
make
making
it
the world a
shine.
better place.
Say again?
He feels like he's making the world a better place by committing crime.
He wants a child. That's his own. He
Huh?
wants a child. Like originally, he was originally made to essentially mind wipe people, but then he became sentient and he decided he wanted to have a child with Motoko, and it's essentially the cyberplane. That's why they fused in the end. And I quite enjoyed that because that is sort of a theme throughout the movie of evolution and how and change. It's even mentioned earlier in a few spots. And it's very And I found that scene to be. I mentioned some scenes were talky, which this scene was, but I feel that scene it worked, like just sort of that character and that conversation between them as essentially as the world falls apart. I also really liked the action scene beforehand, the climax of the film, in which Motoko fights this really cool spider tank. It's a very, and I also love the setting of the museum. Did they ever say it's a museum? I believe it's a.
They never say what kind of place it is. Just a deserted place in the middle of nowhere.
I'm assuming it's a museum because we do see all these fossils and such. Again, going into the theme of evolution. It's a very, So it's, and I found it very, so it is very interesting. And it is, so I thought, I also like the conclusion in which they both fuse into a new being. And I like how that is and I like how that, I like the implications of that and how, what's the word when it's not clear?
Unclear?
Not clear. And how vague it is as to what the new, it's Motoko is, she still goes by Motoko, but it's essentially a fusion between her and 2501. And I like how it's unclear exactly what this means for the rest of the world. In this movie at least. I'm a little bit into the sequel, but we'll get there. So I found it to be really cool. So just to wrap things up, would you recommend Ghost in the Shell, Luca?
Yes, I would recommend it to people who like animes, and if you're into sci-fis, please check this out.
I would recommend it as well. It's a great film. A little talky at parts, and some of the also, at least for the dub I watched, it was a little wonky at times. I don't feel the performances were at their best, but it's an interesting story and world. It's very atmospheric. It looks gorgeous, and has some interesting themes. I say it's a very interesting film. If you like animation, or just want to see something, or just want to see something that's very pretty to look at and very fun and fun with some good action. Oh, that's an aspect I want to touch on before we go. What do you think of the action?
I like the action. The action feels energetic and hyped up. It just like adds more meaning to the film.
I would say it feels very it feels very powerful and at times very slow. A lot of the action, there are not too many action scenes in the film, but they do feel very, I shouldn't say powerful, very brutal. There are not a lot of action scenes in the film, but when they are there, do come up, they are very long and drawn out, and it does feel very impactful. A lot of them feel more like a test of stamina than pure strength.
Despite how brutal the action scenes are, I think they fit the film quite well.
They fit the film quite well because they're brutal. It does feel very, in many ways, they do feel grounded. Anyways, really good film. I'd give it on a recommendation scale. I'd probably give it between a 7 and an 8. More leaning towards a 7.
I give it an 8. It's a solid 8 for me.
All right. So for next week, I want to continue this theme of Ghost in the Shell. Maybe we can even go through not the whole franchise, because the franchise is some TV shows, if I'm mistaken. But we can go through the filmography of this franchise. I say let's go into Ghost in the Shell 2, because I did watch that as well, and I have some interesting thoughts on that. Anyways, thank you for your time, Luca.
Alright, thank you for joining me, TJ.